What did you think when you got here?
Well, naturally, I'd been here, lobbied, as my job would permit, lobbied for a number of years. And you just learn new things every day, but I don't think anybody realizes, and probably I didn't at the time realize the amount of work that's done by the delegates and the amount of work that's done by the people behind the scenes. I think it's just an unbelievable amount of work that goes on in a day, in a day.
Well, you have people that help you, of course. Let's say you have a bill you want to introduce and you don't know how to do all the right wording in this thing. You have the idea of what do you do with it?
Well, what you do, you take the gist of the bill and go down and talk with the legislative services, who would be there. Like the people that I dealt with was John Hurd, and they drafted up the language. You tell them basically what you want. They do the drafting of the language and get the bill back to you.
Well, is it really a problem? I know when I come down here to Richmond, I see lobbyists, people in delegates' offices. It's hard for me to get in to see you guys sometimes. But do you fill your whole morning up with this before you go into session at 12 o'clock?
Well, I've come to find out that one of the most important attributes you can have is be well organized, because there are certain things that you know are going to happen that day in session. You have to be prepared either for voting or for debate on a particular bill or issue. So what you have to do is in the evenings, like Jackie was talking about, the time doesn't stop but on 9 to 5 basis. You have to be prepared constantly for whatever may arise. And so what you try to do is try to block out certain time periods for constituents and certain time periods for people who may drop by or whatever, and be able to be flexible in those time periods but still get your work done.
Let's get back to some other questions now. Jackie, particularly in your case, you came as president of the UMW local, right, or UMW. What's going to happen to the strike? And we'll talk about this maybe before we get into some legislative problems. Is it going to be over soon, or are we going to vote? Where are we at in this situation?
Well, in talking with my office today in Washington there, they have, I think Monday, they're getting back with the judge to work about 3 p.m. They're going to get back together and try to finish up some details. Right now, both sides are working with the NLRB, trying to get everything in a package so they be presented to the judge and hopefully get the situation taken care of and get the ratification process going and get the strike taken care of.
I know it seemed like Ms. Dole announced the settlement of the strike so many weeks ago, but yet nothing has happened. Have any idea when the vote might be taken, or any guess possible?
I'd say it would all depend on probably Monday's meeting. If Monday's meeting proves to be positive, then I think you could quite possibly see something happen that week.
I see.
We're looking forward to hoping that it's all positive Monday.
Bo, now you have a problem in your area, and this has been in the news not as much as the UMW strike, but landfill.
Right.
What's happening there?
Well,
excuse me. And you as a freshman, I guess it's unusual. You've had 2 bills passed, right? You want to talk about them, or I have a pretty good idea of what they are, but maybe you want to describe what you have introduced and where they are in the whole scheme of things so far.
Well, one of the first bills that I introduced had to do with the Mine Safety Board in the state of Virginia. Basically changed the name up to Virginia Mine Safety Board, more clearly define the duties that the committee is to do to work with the chief, Harry Childers. So basically it just more defined exactly what they were to do and work together in looking at the regulations and things. So I was happy. It was happy to introduce the bill. It was one that was supported by all parties, and those are the type of bills sometimes you like to deal with there. So it's already passed the House and be going over to the Senate. The other bill deals with the coal and gas advisory board that's in each county that has the taxes revenue from coal. And what that basically did, it just changed where it was a unanimous decision before anything could be presented to the counties or the city, that it just makes it a majority. In other words, a majority of 3 people could present something to the county. So
now, this has to do with the money that comes from the severance tax?
Yes, yes, in the counties, right.
And where does this money normally go? To the individual county
that
the coal is mined in?
Right.
Bo, you mentioned, I guess, about disposal, landfills that Covington has and Roanoke has and all the others, but is it as serious down there?
Well, it's naturally a problem, and I think it's a problem throughout the whole United States. So it's something that's going to have to be addressed, and just ways to do it. It's tough to figure out, but it's got to be addressed.
If there's a lot of money about, a lot of talk about money this year, and the state is short of money, we passed, or the legislature passed a law about a more liberal tax exemptions for pensioners. Now they've got to go back and change it. There's talk about delaying the distribution of recordation taxes to the localities. What's your feeling on it? Should we backtrack on the pension exemption? If we don't, how are we going to get the money? You have any idea?
Well, I don't know that I've got all the answers. I know they're still working on that, and
Right.
people with a lot more knowledge than I have are working on it. I think it's a tough decision to say that, well, we're going to take back what we told people we were going to do. Right now, unless something, I tend to say that they should go ahead with what they agreed to start with there. So unless there's something that changes my mind there, you know, that's my feelings on it. You know, you pass something, then you come right back and take it back. You know, it's not going to sit well with everybody.
But we know it was done in a big hurry last year.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people regret this, but what do you think's going to happen? What's your feeling?
Well, there's several different bills being introduced, either on the Senate side or on the House side, that try to reach some sort of compromise in that. I think that as far as the recording tax is concerned, there again, that's one of the...
to redo the distribution formula for education funds, because the poor counties like Southwest Virginia doesn't have as much money per capita as the richer counties. Have you been involved with this, or do you have any, I guess, idea of what's going on now? Or does anyone, does anybody? And I know it's a real crazy problem.
Well, I may know a little bit more
Okay.
than Jackie does on that, because one of the things when I was in law school, I did legal research on the then existing school funding formula.
I see.
And at that point in time, I think most of the authorities on the subject would indicate that that there was no equal protection benefit at that time through the Constitution. However, not too long ago, in fact last year, they redid the formula. I did away with what they called categorical funds and established it back into what they said was the formula, base formula itself. And basically what that did, and there again, I believe if you talk to your local superintendents, they were told through the state agencies that those funds that they would have received were in the base formula, but no one can find them. And I think that if you look at the numbers and analyze them as they are now, you'll see there's a wide disparity between different localities in the state, which may, and some have talked about this, rise to an equal protection argument in court. And if that be the case, then I'd hate to see, without a change, I'd hate to see the localities in the southwestern part of the state have to go to court to defend their abilities to educate your children.
You know, when you say Southwest Virginia, that includes Covington, Clifton,
You're
the
not
whole
lying.
area.
That's right.
Jackie, in the area of mining, I guess, I know Danny Bird's introduced a bill, I think it was Danny, to allow drilling for methane gas. Number one, how will it affect the area down there? And number two, will it affect miners per se? I don't know if the miners will be involved in this or not, but what's the situation? How do you feel about it?
Well, what the bill does is basically, you know, the methane things that comes out of the mines now naturally is dangerous when it's in the mines, and that's always been a fear of the miners is methane explosions. And the gas that comes out of the mines now is just liberated into the air. And what they're wanting to do is drill down into the coal beds, and, you know, bring the gas out, which would it's going to be prosperous for the counties and things that get involved in it. I think one of the concerns is, and they worked it out as was brought up in the committee today, they worked both with the mines and the gas people worked together, sitting down, rewriting the laws and the guidelines of how to do it and do it safely. So it's going to be people working together, and I think that's the key, that all the departments are working together. The coal and gas people are working together, and they're going to work with they also had groups in the environmental people and also family people that concerned citizens. I think about every aspect has been addressed, and people are real anxious because it's going to mean a lot for Southwest Virginia.
Essentially, there will not be more jobs for minors, though, will it, per se? Because they won't really be involved in this type of operation. Is that right?
Well, I don't know that you can say it'd be any more jobs for minors. I think it opens up. There may be a lot of things that the minors can do that, you know, may get jobs and things. I think it's just that it's going to make them feel safer knowing that the gas, most of the gas is going to be gotten out of the coal seams maybe before they ever get to it.
Well, back on, we were talking about schools just a moment ago. We killed the school board election bill again, and this thing seems to come up every year for the last 20-some years. How do you feel? Should we elect school boards? And I know it's pretty passé now, but...
Well, well, the Senate killed it. And during the campaign, I indicated in no uncertain terms that I did favor elected school boards. That I did favor elected school boards. And the reasoning behind that is I've been in education all my life. My family, myself, I used to teach. My father was an administrator. My mother still teaches. My wife teaches. And it's been not only in the Covington, Allegheny area and Botetourt, but as well as other parts of the state. And I had concern that at times the school board may not have been totally responsive to the needs of the citizens. And I thought that if indeed those elected school boards could come in and try to be more responsive to the citizens' needs. I also am aware that when you put the education system within the political realm, it may cause some problems. My greatest concern with elected school boards is whether or not giving them their own taxing authority would be beneficial, because once again the purse strings would be covered by the Board of Supervisors. Those were my concerns, but I think that the open and full-fledged debate was important. We didn't have an opportunity to do it in the House, but hopefully we'll be able to do that again in the future.
Jackie, did this come up during your campaign?
Well, my campaign was rather fast, so I
Yeah, I know
don't think that, but I do favor the election of school boards. I think it's a democratic process, and I think that people can select good people to serve on the board, and I don't think there's any question that, you know, their choice and things is what the people would like to see.
But it would be a problem to elect a school board and not let them have taxing authority.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that fully. Yeah.
The House, I believe, has passed a bill. I think it was the House. Sometimes I get mixed up between the House and the Senate. For the death penalty for any kind of a murder related to drug offenses, and I know drugs are a real problem this year. Maybe what's your feeling on it? Maybe, Bo, what do you think?
Well, I voted for it. I think that once again, I have 3 children of my own, 6, 4, and 2, and I have great concern about what their future is. The drug situation has gotten so out of hand that maybe you have to take extraordinary steps in order to gain the attention, in order to take those first initial steps to say, look, we have to focus in on that. I don't believe it is an all-encompassing answer to it, because if I believe that, then I'd fail to recognize the other symptoms and causes of it. So I think it has to be a twofold application towards some sort of resolution. I think there has to be stiff penalties. I think people should be aware of it, and that includes, and I believe that was Delegate X bill that you're talking about that I signed on as a co-patron, because I felt as though that it was necessary to bring that to bear. At the same time, I think that you have to take other methods as well, because there again, politically speaking, that looks like the great thing to do. And I think it does as a part of a package. But from a very realistic standpoint, it is a part of a package that has to be addressed at other means as well.
Jackie, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe the drug problem in far southwest isn't as great as it is in other parts of the area, and I'm not sure about that, but do you favor the death penalty?
Yeah, I also was co-patron on the bill. I think what you find out is that drugs are throughout this United States, and not only in the cities, it's also in the rural areas. And I think that there's a day and a time coming to where everybody's got to take a stand against drugs. If they don't, then it's going to take us all over. So I favor the bill. I co-patroned it. I'm for it.
Is there anything else you think we could do as far as you as a legislator can do to, deter drug use, drug selling, or I don't think there's any other bills up there dealing with drugs that I know of. There might be.
Well, I think that there are some resolutions to try to help. Delegate Eck, once again, has instituted a drug bill. I don't know if it passed today or not. I know it was discussed. I think it did, about a drug task force fund set up. to where indeed the state would set up the funds, or set up this trust fund, and try to get private contributions from businesses, individuals, whatever, in an effort to, once again, educate and stop the flow of it. Also, there's constitutional amendment now with regard to the seizure of drug funds and paraphernalia and assets, to where it would not go back to the literary fund, but go into the stopping of the drug problem and law enforcement.
Jack, let me ask you, it seems like every time I'm down here there's a demonstration and about something. And when you all leave the General Assembly building going over to the Capitol, that you always have to go down a long line of people demonstrating. But the biggest demonstrations have been abortion. And I guess as of today, the biggest thing is parental consent for an abortion for a teenager. What's your feelings on this whole matter?
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. Probably that is one of the biggest issues that's throughout the country. And I don't guess it's a situation that anybody likes abortion. But I tend to favor, in the case of rape and incest, I do favor abortion in those particular cases. As far as notification, then I do feel like the parents should be notified.
Do you believe that abortion should be outlawed completely?
I won't say no, not outlawed completely. No, I don't feel it, because there's certain instances I think that abortion should be proper.
Bo, what do you feel on that?
Well, I think the bill that's in the General Assembly now is parental notification,
Right.
and I favor that. I know that there are other people that are strictly against that. I've had people come in and talk to me, and I understand the problems of dysfunctional families and whether or not the family that I believe that I have and hope that I have may not necessarily be what reality speaks. But I know that. I've taken that in consideration. But what I'm concerned about is I have a 2-year-old daughter, and if the occasion ever arose, which I wouldn't hope, but if it did, I would hope that I would be notified in an effort to help her and do whatever I could do to do that. And I'm speaking strictly from a parent's point of view. I know that. But those are the type of things that I feel that parents can help with if indeed they are that interested. There again, I'm fully aware of the dysfunctional families and the situation that plays into it, but I would be favoring the notification without any problem at all.
All right, since you're both on the House roads and something else.
Internal navigation.
Internal navigation. I heard today that, all right, this committee killed a bill that Delegate Cranwell had to raise this, to lower the speed limit on gravel roads from 55 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour. And you also killed a bill, Chip Woodham's, I believe it was, to give us a 5-day grace period on an automobile inspection sticker when it ran out. Were you there when they did this? How'd you vote?
On Chip's bill, I was there. I don't think Jackie was, because that was basically done in committee, I believe. I don't think that got, in subcommittee, I don't think that got to the committee floor. The thought at the time that occurred was, you've got 12 months. You know, if you go extend it another 5 days or whatever, and understanding the situation involved, but by the same token, you have 12 months. I know that my inspection sticker ran out in January, and the day I came back here one Sunday, I stopped by a place and please inspect my car. But that's the way it is. You have 12 months, and once you start giving, where do you stop? As they say, the slippery sliding slope of eventually taking in, trying to consider all these different factors, it may be a little much.
One thing I might point out is the fact they're both on the same committee, but you're assigned to different subcommittees, so you're on the same committee, you might handle one bill, but Jackie might have something completely different, right? Okay. Let me ask you no legislative question. Should VMI remain all male? And I don't know if the legislature will ever get involved in that. It probably will go to court, and not much y'all can really do, but maybe because it's in the news now. What do you think?
Let me speak first on that, then I'll let the lawyer handle that. I'm going to get off real easy on that. I'm going to say the Attorney General is handling that, and just every how she speaks to handle it, I'm sure she'll handle it in the right way.
I like that, Jack.
Boy,
I like that.
He's beginning to sound like a lawyer.
He sounds like a politician.
Yeah, right.
The problem that you have is with the federal mandates and with the federal regulations and that sort of thing. And I would try, I'm glad to see that she's taken that step to at least try to involve the state and come back with the federal government to explain what its procedures and why it does what it does. I'm glad to see that aspect of it, because I think sometimes the federal government makes these mandates that states never question, and that bothers me. So that aspect of it I think is very good, and I'm hoping that indeed she'll be able to prevail in some way, shape, fashion, or form. But I think the prevailing view is it may be an uphill battle.
One quick question before we leave. It comes up every week almost. Lottery. Should the law be changed and some of the lottery proceeds go back to localities as opposed to being used for capital?
Yes.
You think yes?
Yes.
Okay.
The question in my mind is how you're going to disperse it.
Right.
Not if it goes back. Because if you do it with point of sale, let's say in my district in Covington, the city of Covington, as opposed to Allegheny County, I think you'll find that most of the lottery tickets are sold in the city of Covington. Now, if they're sold to Allegheny County residents, which may be the most outlets being in the city, I don't know. So I think there's some sort of disparity there. So I think the question in my mind is not should it be returned, but what method.
Jackie, we're just about out of time. You think it ought to go back?
Yes, I do, and I think definitely part of it earmarked for education, and then let the localities deal with the rest of it.
Fines against the UMW, but the decision won't become public until tomorrow. Williams had a written decision ready to sign and file today. The union asked him to delay it, and he agreed for 1 day. The reason for the union seeking the delay is not known. The Southwest Virginia coal strike appears close to an end, but there are more questions than answers today. A judge turned down an agreement yesterday that would have abolished $64 million in fines against the union. News Center 5's John Mongol reports the coalfield community is awaiting the next move.
Well, I don't know if you'd call it more disappointed or disheartened. I think we're more disheartened than anything because it's been a long time and we were looking for good things, but we're still here.
The latest setback in the strike against Pittston Coal by the United Mine Workers was Judge Don McLaughlin's refusal of a joint motion from the company and the union. That agreement would have wiped out millions in fines, but the judge said that it would not work.
Kind of unclear right now what the judge expects us to do. Or that's what we're discussing today. What do we do? Where do we go from here?
Union officials are working on the problem, but they've given no indication that they've come up with a solution. The judge will only say that he will know the solution when he sees it.
But we thought on the 2nd of January, when they come out with a tentative agreement, that old matter of 10 days, we'd see our people going back to work, and it seemed like they've been one delay after another one.
Despite the setbacks, almost everyone here in the Southwest Virginia coal fields believe the strike is nearly over. The question that remains is what happens next, and no one seems to know.
We don't know how much longer it'll be, but we think it'll be soon.
The company and the union have 10 days to come up with another plan for the judge. Getting this issue resolved is a key to getting a rank-and-file vote on the contract.
None of us wants this dispute to go 1 day longer than it has. We all think it's time, the company, the union, the communities, to get these people back to work.
And a lot of the wounds that this has caused.
When a judge refused to dismiss fines against the UMW. And since that's one of the conditions to end the strike, miners now don't know when they will ever get a chance to vote on a contract. News Center 6's Betsy Thompson has more.
Where there was once hope, there are now increasing feelings of anger and frustration.
I know that everyone is frustrated. These people want to go back to work. We want them back to work. It's time that this thing comes to an end.
It gets kind of aggravating, and people asking you, members in your local asking you, what we're going to do and all this, and you're still waiting on the courts.
The judge, for whatever reason, doesn't want to settle this, and it makes you mad.
The judge's decision Monday to let stand, at least for now, more than $64 million in fines against the union has appeared to have left officials on both sides of the picket line full of unanswered questions.
It was not real clear on what exactly does he expect from the union, so we're reevaluating all that, factoring in where we go from here.
Some even question the judge's motive behind the decision.
Since his father was beat in the last election by Jackie Stump, I hope it's not a personal issue with him, but I hope he can keep it on a basis that law and order shall prevail.
Pittston officials appeared more confident, releasing only this brief statement indicating their faith in Virginia's judicial system. If there's one thing union members we talked to agree on, it's that the judge's decision certainly cast a shadow over the entire bargaining process. And if Pittston and the UMW can't come up with a plan to change his mind, then the few miners here today won't be lonely for long.
This has been a letdown for a lot of people that wanted to get back to work. And now it seems like we could be right back to square one within 10 days and back out on the picket line.
In Russell County, Virginia, Betsy Thompson, News Center 6.
A similar decision to drop $1 million in fines against the union is being considered by
Abingdon.
U.S.
Judge Glenn Williams has agreed to reduce contempt of court levies against the union if other conditions are met. Union President Richard Trumka says he doesn't agree with the ruling, but by itself it won't hold up a vote on the tentative settlement to end the coal strike. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell has more.
Judge Glenn Williams says the strike has hurt the union as well as Pittston financially. In weighing that along with the public interest in seeing the strike end and maintaining the integrity of his court, he tried to reach a balance.
Trying to hew the middle ground and not impose something so harsh on the union that they can't meet it. And I think they can meet it, and I'm sure they will tell you they can.
Williams wants the union to pay $280,000 in fines, down from nearly $1 million, which he says should have been cut in half months ago because of a court error. Dismissal is subject to many conditions, including that the union and strike leaders Cecil Roberts and John Cox perform community service and appear in his court to purge themselves of contempt.
I'm interested, regardless of who it comes from, more in sincerity and genuine spirit of contrition.
Williams says important to him was the union agreeing to a 3-year expansion to Virginia of an appeals court order forbidding the type of strike activity that's plagued Southwest Virginia for 10 months.
I've considered it a very important document and a good faith effort on the part of the union to show that they want to have some labor peace and harmony.
Just before the ruling was announced, Judge Williams says he was advised of renewed violence on the picket lines. He warned that a continuation of violence will void his ruling.
I had a call this morning that a truck had been shot up, and this is the second time that this same truck has been shot up in the last 2 weeks.
Williams called the fines in his court sort of a pittance compared to the $64 million in fines Circuit Judge Don McLaughlin has thus far refused to dismiss.
The union will begin ratifying its tentative contract with Pittston Coal. No one has seen the settlement agreement since it was struck 6 weeks ago. News Center 5's John Mongol reports miners will vote Monday whether to end the 10-month-old strike.
United Mine Workers had hoped to clear their legal problems in several courts before putting the contract to a vote. But in a printed statement, Union President Richard Trumka said the wheels of justice are turning slowly in some courts. Our members at Pittston have waited long enough. UMW Vice President Cecil Roberts will unveil the tentative agreement tomorrow in a series of meetings. District 28 striking miners will gather at the Russell County Fairgrounds at 8 o'clock.
This is a long-awaited milestone in the strike between the United Mine Workers and Pittston Coal. But the final word on whether or not the strike is settled rests with the rank and file, and they'll be voting on Monday.
Trumka vows he will continue the union's fight in the courts. Federal Judge Glenn Williams refused to excuse all of the fines against the miners. And Circuit Judge Don McLaughlin has turned down a compromise on some $64 million in fines. Lawyers for the union and the company were given 10 days to offer McLaughlin an alternative plan. Part of the agreement with Pittston was to wipe out all litigation. But Trumka said the rank and file have a right to see the contract, the product of a tent.
Mine Workers Union was there, and so was our own Jim Conrad, who joins us now from the newsroom. Jim, I take it Richard Trumka was very upbeat this evening.
Yes, John, he was very upbeat and confident that the longest strike in the history of the union may soon be over.
I think everybody's excited about that. We're pretty excited about it. After the contract's ratified, we'll make safety runs, inspections of the mines, to make sure that they're all safe, and then hopefully people will be back to work pretty quickly.
And you're confident it will be ratified?
I feel pretty confident, yes.
The president of the Mine Workers Union is at this time explaining the as-yet unseen contracts to the leadership of the union. Tomorrow, mass meetings will be held throughout the coal fields to explain the contract to the rank and file.
We'll explain the contract to the membership tomorrow. Membership has a 2-day reading period where, according to our Constitution, no meetings are to be held. They get to study the contract, and the vote will take place on Monday. And probably Monday night at 10, 11 o'clock, perhaps earlier, we'll know the outcome.
Trumka said the first of the year that this contract would be a model for relations between labor and management for the future.
We tried not to just arrive at an agreement, but we tried to forge a relationship with the Pittston company. And we're hopeful that we will have accomplished that so that when we go back, this type of fight does not become necessary ever again in the future. I think one thing it's demonstrated that whenever you have a strike of this length over the issues that the strike was over, there's really no ultimate winners in the thing. It has a toll on everybody, our membership, the communities, the state, and Pittston and the mine workers. And we're hopeful that with a working relationship, this won't become necessary again.
Millions of dollars in fines continue to haunt the union, in particular, $64 million in fines levied by Russell County Judge Don McLaughlin. Trumka says the union will continue to argue its case in court.
We'll continue to vigorously defend ourselves against those fines, and ultimately we're hopeful it will prevail.
The legal battle may be continuing, but for the first time in nearly 11 months, we can say the end of the strike may be as early as next week. John?
It has indeed been a long strike. Those are the two key points in the proposed contract settlement. As John Munger reports, there is a good chance that the contract will be accepted.
Striking miners by the hundreds filed in to get their first look at the contract that may settle the nation's longest coal strike.
It's been hard, but I think we accomplished what we set out to do.
Union leaders call it the best contract they could negotiate for the nearly 2,000 miners who have been off the job for the last 10 months. It includes 100% medical coverage for miners, their families, and retirees, the continued participation by Pittston in the 1974 pension plan, and a $10 million contribution by the company to the financially troubled 1950 benefit fund. All of these company concessions are identical to the 1988 national UMW contract.
I've never been prouder of a group of people in my entire life, because they brought back not just a contract for the people at Pittston, they got a contract for the entire labor movement.
Pittston also won its key concessions from the union. These include the right to mine coal around the clock, flex-time work schedules that include 10-hour, 4-day work weeks, and the right to contract coal hauling, repairs, and maintenance as long as union jobs are not endangered.
We hope that they'll ratify it and they can go back to work, because a lot of miners needs to go back to work.
The UMW worked for a year without a contract before walking off the job last April. The strike was tense and sometimes violent, and resulted in unprecedented fines that still have not been settled.
And I'm sure they're all very upset about the fines, but hopefully I'll look at the merits of the contract.
A federally mediated agreement came on New Year's Eve, but delays in resolving the legal issues kept the proposed contract secret until today.
If the contract's ratified on Monday, then we'd have an inspection of the mines to make sure they're safe to go back to work, and our people hopefully would be back to work before the end of the week.
The vote won't come until Monday, but most of the miners here in Castlewood believe the contract will be ratified. And they're calling this contract a victory not only for the United Mine Workers, but also for American labor. John Mungle, News Center 5, tonight.
The strike has idled 1,700 miners for nearly a year. Buford Mullins is one of those miners, and he says the proposed contract is a product of hard work.
I was worried from day one, but the way the government, the laws and all has came against labor, especially through the 80s. Anytime that you take on a strike or whatever, you have to be worried, because with the judicial system and laws, the way they're set in place, especially in Virginia, you have to worry about it. But a fight a person can be pushed so far, and then he's going to fight.
But despite the worries and rough times, Mullins and his family have managed to find some high points.
I guess the most enjoyable memory that I have of the strike were the Russians that came to my home for supper, and I sat down and talked one-on-one with them for 2 or 3 hours, and they were delightful people, and that's a high spot of my
today,
life.
or a contract with the Pittston Coal Group. It could end the 10-month-long strike. Good evening. The long-awaited end of the Pittston coal strike appears to be at hand. Union workers are voting on the proposed contract that would put them back to work after those 10 long months on the picket lines. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell joins us now with the latest on it.
Merrill, it's down to a simple yes or no vote now, with only a simple majority required for ratification. And there is every indication at the union polls the vote will be yes.
It's a fair contract for both sides. It's not all of what either side wanted, but it's something both sides could live with. And it'll pass by a large margin.
This is one of the bigger union polls.
Yes or no, there, Ken?
Workers vote here in Dant from Pittston's largest mine in McClure.
We had over 200 people here this morning before 10 o'clock, and out of those 200, we only had 5 or 6 say anything bad about the contract.
But the mood is less than exuberant as miners linger outside. Most say they don't like provisions for starting a 28-day rotation swing shift.
I cannot get rested between shifts, let alone swinging it.
Another troublesome issue is the suspension of 13 strikers indefinitely and more than 30 others temporarily for strike violence.
That I don't agree with. I think if we go back, everybody ought to go back.
Still, even dissenters admit they're probably in the minority.
Can't have everything, you know. You gotta take a little better with the sweet sometimes.
One gauge to consider is that this contract is very close to the national BCOA agreement, approved by the union in 1988 by a 64% vote.
Lisa, when can we expect the results of the voting to be in?
Well, at this time, the voting is mostly over, but union local
is over. The votes will be taken until midnight, and we'll hear the results.
Same contract. In Kentucky, the rank and file appear to have rejected the agreement. In Logan County, West Virginia right now, too close to call. But in Virginia, the Pittston miners' strongest state, returns from today's voting are running 2-to-1 in favor of ratification. Now, if that is the case, nearly 2,000 miners on strike for 10 months will be going back to work before the end of the week. More now on today's voting in Virginia from Tracy Kingsley.
Judge McLaughlin heard from both sides today that they couldn't possibly look to a positive future relationship with strike litigation and fines still hanging over them. McLaughlin said he could understand that, but it was Pittston who had requested such stiff penalties.
Tracy Kingsley was in the Virginia coal fields today during the voting, and here now is that story.
1,700 miners today took control of their fates from Pittston and union negotiators and passed it through their own hands onto the ballot box.
Going to tell us how you voted?
No comment.
Most of the miners at Local 1259 kept their votes to themselves, but they did speak with optimism about what the outcome may be.
The flex time is about the only negative comment I've received. But it's new. It's hard to say whether we'll like it or whether we won't until we work it, I guess.
Well, we've got 90% or 95% of what we were asking for.
So you think it'll pass?
Yes, ma'am. I think it'll go through by a big majority.
That's despite the fact that the Kentucky miners are expected to turn down the contract in support of 13 union members there who could lose their jobs for alleged picket line misconduct.
We hope to take care of those men, give them jobs back somewhere, give them district jobs, let them work somewhere.
Most Virginia union members say they also don't expect $64 million in outstanding fines to affect the outcome of the vote. The balloting was scheduled to go on until 5 o'clock today. Officers of the local unions will count.
The long strike between the United Mine Workers and the Pittston Coal Group is over. Is history. Union workers in 3 states have voted 2-to-1 to ratify a new contract with Pittston. Nearly 2,000 workers voted, and 63% gave approval, almost the same that ratified the 1988 National Agreement. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell has the story.
The strike ends where it started nearly a year ago. Shacks used for cover on picket lines come down with the same union hands that put them up. And temporary housing for replacement workers leave the mine sites for good.
It's a very wonderful feeling. It's like betting on the Super Bowl and then winning.
You think it was worth the fight?
Yeah. If I hadn't stood in there, they wouldn't have gotten nothing.
You glad to see it come down?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got a family to take care of.
Glad to see the strike over?
Yeah. We should have been over, or never happened before I let go.
Although relations between company and workers are moving toward normal, there's still more than $64 million in fines pending against the union. Union officials say they hope the end of the strike will help their case in court.
Both the union and the company have resolved their differences and have pledged an effort to bring peace to the Southwest Virginia area.
A crowd of strikers watched as Roberts got the ratification results by phone from Union President Richard Trumka at a labor convention in Florida.
I'm calling to tell you that the strike is officially over.
Then Roberts phoned that news to Pittston President Mike Odom.
I want to say to you, you've been a very worthy adversary throughout this. We're hoping to work just as hard together now.
Odom gathered later with a crowd of management staff to respond.
Above all, I believe we not only have a good contract, we have a relationship now that we can grow from. We're going to be working hard.
Odom compares the end of the battle to two kids fighting on the block, ending up best friends.
These are great people down here. Don't underestimate their ability to recover.
Odom says union work in the mines will resume Thursday night. In Russell County, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
The coal strike ended within days of workers seeing the contract. But ratification was the product of a bitter 10-month-long confrontation between the union and the company. News Center 5's John Mongol looks at the major events of the strike.
The United Mine Workers walked off the job after staying in the mines for 14 months without a contract. That was April 5th. Union leaders promised a new era in the coal industry's labor history.
We'll make sure our people knows the law, and we intend for it to be a nonviolent strike.
But that lasted only a week. Arrests began for throwing rocks and flattening tires. The state police came in and battle lines were drawn. But civil disobedience was still a key part of the UMW strike plan.
We'll lay in the road. We'll use it every means of nonviolence, whatever it takes. We're out to win this. We're out to win it for the American worker.
Black leader Jesse Jackson arrived in the coal fields in late April, drawing some 10,000 to a rally. By early May, the on-again, off-again federal mediation process was underway. And less than a week after that, Judge Don McLaughlin Jr. began his massive fines that now total $64 million.
Do I think it hurts the strike? Absolutely not. I think in tough times, people will grow closer.
The strike intensified with the summer heat, and federal judge Glenn Williams jailed strike leaders for contempt of court.
He quoted Thoreau and said if people were going to engage in civil resistance, civil disobedience, although it was peaceful, they must be prepared to go to jail if they believe that strongly in what they're doing.
Both sides left the bargaining table.
We feel further bargaining is futile, and I don't see that there's possibilities in the future that the two parties will return to the table.
United Mine Workers members from across the nation began pouring into Southwest Virginia to protest, block coal trucks, and get arrested.
Whatever our president or our leaders decide on is the right thing to do as far as we're concerned. We have nothing to say about what our leaders do.
Other labor leaders joined the mine workers' protest and were arrested.
The question that every person must answer for himself, every person in public life, and every person in private life for that matter, has got to be, which side are you on?
The union's boldest move came in September with the takeover of the Moss 3 preparation plant. They were demanding that the president of the company and the president of the union meet face to face. They were meeting secretly in Canada at the time. An official meeting did not come until late October with the appointment of super mediator William Ussery. following a visit by Labor Secretary Elizabeth Dole, but little progress was seen.
We must fight. We have to fight. There's no retreat. We can't turn back.
On Election Day, District 28 President Jackie Stump upset Judge McLaughlin's father in a write-in campaign that put the union leader in the Virginia General Assembly. An agreement was reached on a proposed contract by New Year's Eve, but the rank and file would not see it until last week. And now it's over. John Mongol, News Center 5.
The strike had dramatic economic and emotional effects on communities throughout Southwest Virginia. Residents of those communities are sharing in the joy over the end of the strike.
I heard about it, and I'm really pleased. I'm glad everybody's going to get back to work, and maybe this economy will pick up.
Well, I'm glad it's over because I work for a management finance company, and the delinquency really affected our
as possible for the company, and hopefully that we now have peace.
A new sound is echoing through the Virginia coal fields. Cheers of happiness replacing shouts of protest from union miners.
Tension has turned to triumph as the bitter 10-month labor battle against Pittston Coal officially comes to an end.
The UMW's rank and file approves the negotiated contract by an overwhelming 2-to-1 margin.
And that means 1,700 miners will be back underground at Pittston Mines in just days. News Center 6's Tracy Kingsley has more.
The picket shacks that have symbolized the union's defiance over the past 10.5 months came tumbling down today, right after UMWA President Rich Trumka handed down the word that the contract had been ratified.
I'm calling to tell you that the strike is officially over. The contract was ratified by a 2-to-1 margin, ratified by 63%.
It's a wonderful thing. I helped put the picket shack up in April the 5th and the day one, and I'm helped taking it down now. And it's very symbolic to me.
While this is a symbolic day, there are also some mixed emotions, a sense of disillusionment among some of the miners who voted against the contract.
13 guys that haven't got a job, I feel bad for them. Mr. Trump just said we all came out together, we all go back together. Somebody lied. Mr. Trump just said we wouldn't see the contract, wouldn't vote on it till all the fines was dropped. Somebody lied there.
UMW Vice President Cecil Roberts says he'll make a personal plea to Pittston to take back the 13 union members who were suspended for alleged picket line misconduct. And attorneys from both sides will try again this week to get fines against the union dropped.
The judge wasn't going to be pressured by the fact that we were on strike into dropping these fines. I would hope that he would take a look at the situation as it exists now.
U.S. Labor Secretary Elizabeth Dole offered her congratulations today, along with hopes for a bright future in the coal fields.
It's a joyous day for everyone and to the nation because it's an example of the success of the collective bargaining process. That's so very important.
Miners will go back to work after safety inspections of the mines and a mandatory retraining session. In Russell County, Virginia, Tracy Kingsley, News Center 6.
And a visibly relieved Mike Odom spoke with renewed optimism today. The Pittston Coal Group president says his union workers mined coal with energy, struck with energy, and now he expects them to go back underground with this same energy. Odom gave much of the credit for the settlement to mediator Bill Usry, saying his perseverance was the key to a win-win contract. Odom also says he's not anticipating any bad blood between union and company when miners go back to work.
Once again, it's been pretty hostile situations above ground, so I don't think so. I think that the employees of the union are going to work very hard with that. I've had many discussions with the leadership of the union. I know they're going to work hard to make certain that that doesn't occur.
Odom says he'll meet tomorrow with union leaders to finalize plans and could have some workers on the job again.
Left economic and emotional scars throughout the coal fields. Perhaps the deepest scars are in Dickinson County, home of Pittston's 2 largest mines. News Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
While picket lines have vanished, gone forever too with the strike is an estimated $725,000 Dickinson County would have collected in coal severance tax revenues. County officials here in Clintwood predict they'll end the fiscal year $1.5 million in the red, mostly due to the strike.
What it will force us to do is to borrow money to fund the budget.
This business in town suffered but survived the strike. Others weren't so lucky.
Every time there's a little news of the strike ending or so forth, why,
business will pick up a little bit. The traffic will start coming through.
We've had clothing stores closed down here in Clintwood. We don't have any locally owned clothing stores now. A grocery store here in town closed down.
Kids here at Clintwood High School got so involved in the strike, they formed a student auxiliary of the union. For them, it was very emotional.
We learned how people come together as one, as in solidarity. We learned the importance of a job.
A lot of pressure exerted on the family, and anytime you have pressure like that, they bring it to school.
It seems that the strike has produced an overall depressing effect on the community.
The strike did unify this community, and the end of it is boosting spirits. And some say they realize better now the need to diversify the economy.
We recognize now more than ever that working on a regional basis is essential to our survival.
In Clintwood, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
The United Mine Workers will have 10 more days to find an alternative to paying $64 million in fines. Judge Don McLaughlin had told the union and Pittston Coal to offer a plan by tomorrow. The judge turned down a joint motion to wipe out the fines in return for 10,000 hours of community service by the union. McLaughlin levied the fines for contempt of court in a civil suit during the 10-month-long cold.
3 pleaded guilty to setting off the explosive. 1 asked for a continuance. The blast ripped through the Mountain Minerals mine last September during an often violent strike. So far, 5 of the striking miners have confessed to various charges.
I think the evidence was overwhelming, and I think the defendants all saw that, and they decided to enter guilty pleas.
Some of the charges: conspiracy and construction and possession of a bomb.
The Pittston strike may be settled, but a big dark cloud is still hanging over the heads of union miners. The UMW faces $64 million in fines from strike violence, and today the union bought some more time to try and get them dismissed. Russell County Circuit Judge Donald McLaughlin.
Fatalities result from such mishaps each year. But now the U.S. Mine Safety and Health Administration has revised a couple of sections of the regulations that deal with roof support standards. One official says the new regulations will increase the safety margin for miners by utilizing new advances in roof bolting technology. Such advances would reduce the dangers associated with removing roof supports. Miners will now be required to take certain steps while removing underground roof supports. Situations in which roof bolts cannot be removed are also clearly spelled out. A management official with experience in roof support removal must oversee the work. And besides all that, operators of the roof bolting machines will be required to obtain certification that the bolts and accessories are up to the industry standards. So when the miners go back...
But not everybody has gone back to work. News Center 5's John Mongol reports it may take 3 months to sort everything out.
Most people thought the contract was a good one. Both the United Mine Workers and the Pittston Coal Group appeared to get the needed concessions. But for an estimated 250 to 300 miners still out of work, that may not be the case.
Some of this was anticipated, some of it we did not. Knew that some operations had worked out during the strike, had some indication the Moss 1 prep plant could possibly be shut down.
In addition, miners who struck companies with coal leases from Pittston still do not have contracts.
There are a number of people that have been on strike throughout the entire dispute that we still have to get contracts with their employers.
Bratton says he will be working on these contracts in the coming week. And there is a gradual startup period after any strike as the company tries to regain its markets. The picket shacks are gone here at Moss number 3, and coal is coming in slowly. The miners are in training, and they'll be back to work here on 2 shifts on Monday. While some operations played out and were closed during the strike, others will be reopening, and union members off the job will still receive strike benefits.
For 60, 90 days, we won't have any idea what the employment level is. And we've committed to helping people through that process till we see where we're at and then go from there.
In Russell County, Virginia, John Mongol, News Center 5.
Union miners in Logan County, West Virginia were among the first to go back to work today after the contract ratification. It will take a week or more for all of the nearly 1,700 miners to return to work because of required safety checks.
It's a rough day on the first one. After laying around 10 months, getting fat, and watching Lost in Space, it's first day back's rough.
It's going pretty smooth. We're looking over the mines. It looks real good inside. A lot better than I expected it to look. We're just prepping.
Mine Workers Representative Jackie Stump was in Kingsport today. The freshman legislator reflected on his past year working with disgruntled miners and uncompromising fellow legislators. He says the strike was a valuable learning experience for his entry into politics.
History, but there is still a lot of healing to take place. United Mine Workers District 28 President Jackie Stump, who spoke to the Kingsport Kiwanis Club, says there are still some hard feelings over the tense and sometimes violent strike.
Anytime that I kind of liken it to a family feud, I guess you might say. You know, sometimes we have families that...
Five's Wendy Griffith takes us back on this anniversary.
The 10.5-month-long strike ended nearly 2 months ago, but on April 5th, 1989, neither Pittston nor the union could have predicted the historic events yet to come. Peaceful resistance tactics brought about mass arrests as miners blocked coal traffic with their bodies. The takeover of Moss No. 3 preparation plant, a desperate attempt by miners to call attention to their struggle.
We go to jail, we get on the road, we go to jail, there's no place left.
The nation and world took notice as other labor groups threw their support behind the strikers. Jesse Jackson and Cesar Chavez were two of the more famous supporters. Secretary of Labor Elizabeth Dole and super mediator William Ussery put Southwest Virginia in the spotlight as they worked to negotiate a strike settlement. The strike was over cuts in health care and pension benefits. But now, with a new contract and benefits intact, life is almost back to normal for most miners.
It'll take a while for everybody to forget what happened, you know, on both sides, but I believe everybody's working together now and trying to put it all behind us.
While most of the miners who went on strike are back on the job now, union officials estimate about 200 are still laid off. At Russell County's Camp Solidarity, a group of laid-off miners pass the time and hope soon they, too, will be back at work.
We're still good union people, and we're still good people that can work for the company left. And I hope that production pick up and all the laid-off people can go back to work and have jobs, work for their family, live in this area, and don't have to think about leaving, you know.
Pittston officials say they hope to be producing the same amount of coal as before the strike by summer, and that means hiring more workers. But for these men, with about 20 years each invested in the coal mines, they're willing to wait.
Give this thing every opportunity. I'd like to think that I'd get back to work so that because what we, I guess, like I said, what we have invested, time we put in to get a contract and everything, I'd like to think I'd benefit from it.
The big question still unanswered. Will Russell County Circuit Judge
William Ussery shared the spotlight. He's the strike super mediator who finally guided talks to a contract settlement. He said he'll also address Pittston's board of directors soon.
I intend to say some of the same things to them that I say here, that it's time that we join hands and that we do the job that we must do in producing coal, and that management do the job that they must do in seeing that the employees of that company are not only protected, and we have job security, and that they'll get the benefits that they entitled to.
The weekend-long celebration is suffering on and off downpours. A lack of contracts with Pittston lease and contract mines, with several hundred miners still out of work, also is putting a damper on it.
We have several ongoing negotiations, many labor charges, a lot of activity with the Labor Board right now, 2 or 3 that are involved in litigation. It's a slow process because of the court and Labor Board activity primarily.
Ironically, the crowd here at the victory party is not as large as some of the strike rallies. The union says the weather's partly to blame. Also, there's now work at Pittston on Saturday.
If it had come a day or two after the going back to work, it'd been a little bit different.
Other unions that supported the miners' strike have come back to celebrate, and some, like Greyhound bus drivers, say they need the miners' help now.
And now it's up to us to take the lead again, to set the pace again,
Pleased with the performance of the Pittston Coal Group, which turned in a modest profit last month, the first full month its mines have been back in operation since the end of the strike. Douglas says it may be several more months before the effects of the strike wear off and the coal division is back to its normal level of production. Well, the United Mine Workers are showing that labor solidarity is still strong 4 months after the end of the Pittston strike. The UMW is holding a weekend-long solidarity celebration in the coal fields of Southwest Virginia. Among the featured guests and speakers were UMW President Rich Trump and two-time presidential candidate Jesse Jackson. The rally was intended to celebrate the miners' victory in settling their strike against Pittston and to show support for striking Greyhound bus drivers and Eastern Airlines machinists, many of whom took part in today's rally. Well, the nearly year-long Pittston strike has left some unresolved issues, some of which the National Labor Relations Board will try to settle soon. The NLRB will be traveling to 3 West Virginia cities, including Beckley, for a series of hearings to determine whether the UMW was responsible for a number of wildcat sympathy strikes like this one against other coal companies during the strike against Pittston. The Labor Board has consolidated several complaints filed by a number of coal companies who blame the UMW
economy
for...
is growing. John Mongol tells us about the governor's stop at the Tri-City Airport today.
Governor Wilder came to the region to discuss area concerns and problems. And for the coal field economy, the 10.5-month-long strike between the Pittston Coal Company and the United Mine Workers was both a concern and a problem.
To say that it didn't hurt would be misleading. You were already not up to the curve that we would have liked to have seen.
The union is back at work, and the personal and economic healing processes have begun.
I think it hurt for several reasons. I think it hurt in terms, first of all, of those persons who were directly involved. The miners, as well as the store owners and the people who were depending on their livelihoods for the economy.
One concern for area leaders was the impression the strike made on companies looking at Southwest Virginia for future expansion.
For a brief period, it sent out signals that there wasn't a viable workforce in Southwest Virginia, and I think that's dissipated somewhat.
Wilder says that has passed because the region's workforce...
22 labor leaders today in Russell County, Virginia. They were all charged with blocking the entrance to the county courthouse last year. The demonstration was about the Pittston United Mine Workers strike. News Center 5's John Mongol has more.
The strike between Pittston and the mine workers was an emotional one for the American labor movement. At issue were health benefits, and in addition, after the defeats of the 1980s, the unions needed a victory.
And there was a strong desire to demonstrate support and to do everything that we could to help bring it to a successful conclusion.
Last August, union officials representing almost every aspect of domestic labor blocked the courthouse here. 12 came to court and entered guilty pleas last March. But Kirkland, UMW President Rich Trump, and 8 others did not appear. All 22 were summoned back to Lebanon today, and their charges were dismissed. Trumka calls the demonstration that led to these arrests the hallmark of the 10.5-month-long strike.
It's been a while, probably since the 30s or 40s when all of labor has really come together to try to get something done.
The strike has been settled and the court charges dismissed. But some 400 contract workers who walked out in the Pittston strike still did not
coal strike. News Center 5's Jim Conrad reports that comes to more than $50 million.
The ruling is harshly worded. Judge Don McLaughlin Jr. calls the union's offer to perform community service paltry compared to what he considers repeated massive violent violations of his court orders restricting strike activity. The judge says the union used the end of the strike to try to extort a favorable ruling from him, and he says he views the union as still defiant and deserving no relief for not only violating orders, but refusing to pay fines. McLaughlin vacates fines he ordered payable to Pittston because Pittston consented at the end of the strike. But the judge says as the strike progressed, the union's conduct shifted from company concern to public concern, and he acted to protect the public, which has not consented to do
those $64 million in fines against the UMW. And today, a court decision was handed down regarding those fines. Russell County Circuit Judge Donald McLaughlin going along with a request by the Pittston Company to drop all the fines brought against the union by the company itself, totaling $12 million. But Judge McLaughlin also ruled the union will have to fork over the rest, $52 million.
Seats will be Friday night. Good seats left because it's general admission, just have to show up a little early, but there are plenty of tickets left. Friday night for one of the most exciting events of the year, the most exciting Busch Grand National race, the Jerry Johnson 250. Saturday night, it's already filled. Everybody will be showing up Saturday night, except for the defending champion, ironically enough, who's still nursing his injuries suffered in Daytona during practice for the Firecracker 400 earlier this year in July. Darrell Waltrip will not be back to defend his Busch 500, but there are
Center 5's Lisa Mitchell reports.
Judge McLaughlin will go down in history, the one that took the Union,
out
of the Southwest Virginia and the rest of the United States, and we'll be back working for $3 an hour again.
He found every coal miner in the United States, and that's what we're mad over.
That's exactly.
And all we did was tried our best to run a peaceful strike, which I think we did.
For the first time, some rank-and-file union members are admitting their illegal activity during the Pittston strike was wrong, and that compensation at some level is due.
We probably do owe the state of Virginia a little bit for the inconvenience of the state troopers. They had to bring some in, we understand that, and the cost of that. But as far as $50 million, there's no way.
We did wrong, but why couldn't we make restitution? We was all willing to work out here on the highways, the ball fields, the old age homes, anywhere, to show our community, our neighbors, hey, we did wrong with sitting in the road, but you don't have to destroy the union.
The entire labor movement rallied behind Pittston miners during the strike. Mine workers say other unions aren't going to sit still over this either.
If this is upheld by the courts, there'll be a nationwide strike of every union in this country. You mark my word.
Miners still contend McLaughlin is trying to get even for union leader Jackie Stump unseating in an election shocker McLaughlin's father, former veteran House Delegate Don McLaughlin Sr. Stump says he hopes it's not revenge, and he hopes the union doesn't have to now face a criminal contempt investigation, something McLaughlin is calling a must.
And then if you got to go back into court and start answering all criminal charges, things like that, then you just start replaying all the different things that's happened. And I know our people don't want it. Southwest Virginia, I don't think, wants it.
In Castlewood, Virginia, Lisa Mitchell, News Center 5.
Many miners say they are not treated fair by the judicial system, and that's another reason they find it hard to accept McLaughlin's ruling. Miners cite recent examples in the Jewel Valley area where union members are still striking Pittston contract operations. Last week, a striker's home was riddled with bullets.
I called law, and when they found out strike-related, they act like it was over then. You know, it's pretty low.
Union to fork over. Judge Donald McLaughlin dismissed $12 million that would have gone to the company, but upheld the rest to be divided among Russell and Dickinson counties and the state. As Tracy Kingsley reports, union members are lashing out against the judge's ruling.
But here McLaughlin, it shows Lady Justice with a blindfold on.
Anger and disbelief, union members today reeling from the shock of Judge McLaughlin's order. They believe he has an axe to grind since UMW Executive Board member Jackie Stump waged a last-minute campaign in last year's election to defeat his father, Donald McLaughlin Sr., a longtime House of Delegates member.
Criminal contempt proceedings must be instituted. Who's he after? Why $50 million is not enough for him. He wants to put Jackie Stump in jail. I hope it's not vindictive back toward me, because, you know, a judge is not supposed to be that way. A judge is supposed to be open-minded.
Union attorneys are working on an appeal. Meanwhile, the first payment looms 10 days away. Union leaders say they can't afford to pay any amount, and if they're forced to shell out millions, it could severely hurt future and current strikes. Most of the men gathered here today are still striking Pittston's smaller contract mines in Jewel Valley.
It'll break us, probably.
Russell County officials had asked McLaughlin to drop the fines to help bring an end to the dispute, which included a union takeover of a prep plant, sit-down demonstrations, and roadblocks. Whether they'll turn down their share of the fines in the face of budget cuts is a whole new question.
In deliberating on that, they would have to give some consideration, to the order that the judge has put down.
In Russell County, Virginia, Tracy Kingsley, News Center 6.
Now, when News Center 6 asked Judge McLaughlin to respond to the union's accusations today, his only comment was a judge is supposed to make decisions according to how he knows the law. It's not the person who rules, it's the court.